Hey, what is up, everybody? Metal Biker Dude coming at you here. Okay, back. I say that every fucking weekend. I don't know why, but this time it applies. So, we have a wonderful PayPal for Michael Morado. When I saw this particular one, when I first opened this up and I saw the list that he gave me, I was like, oh my God, Michael, right on, brother. Because this particular one is how DJ Dilla humanized his MPC3000. And I'm sitting here looking at an old MPC3000. I'm very, very keenly aware of what MPCs are. I have an MPK sitting over here. And MPK is basically what the MPC wants to be. The MPK wants to be what the MPC is. So in other words, I have a cheaper version of the MPC, but mine is a keyboard. It's not the beat making machine. Although one of those is coming in my very, very near future. I just got a new keyboard as well. Native Instruments S49. This one. This is my MPK. Why are they sitting on their side like that? Well, that's because I'm a fat, lazy fuck. No, actually, it's because I have no fucking room in this room. Normally, it sits in Studio B, but that's being occupied by my daughter again. So, Studio B is my daughter's bedroom. Anyway, so I am very aware of what MPCs are, and I know that we are 4 minutes in this video and haven't even begun it yet. True dirty fashion, right, Michael? All right, guys. So, and I have no hat on, so now my headphones don't know what to do. Let's check this out. And this should be really fucking dope, man. Honestly, it really should. I better open that up for you guys. To hear some history on this stuff. I'm guessing that's what this is. Or some sort of, I can't imagine he would send me a tutorial. So I'm guessing that's what this is.
What you're looking at is an MPC3000. It sits in a room amongst the most iconic relics of our country's musical history. And that room is on the 4th floor of the National Museum of African American History in our nation's capital. That MPC was owned by J.I.D, who composed some of the most revered beats in hip-hop history.
Okay, so, excuse me, if you don't know, I'm the idiot that didn't know all of the things that DJ Dilla brought to the world. And we just did a video going over how he created an album pretty much out of thin air using one of these things. It's an amazing story in itself.
Technology has just taken a giant leap forward. Hello, I'm Roger Lynn, and this is the MPC60 MIDI Production Center, created by myself and a Kai professional.
I was just getting ready to say, he looks like a dork that would do that.
The MPC is
but the world
this
needs
compact
dorks, man.
machine that's a holding station for all types of samples, which you can play with 16 touch-sensitive pads. The very first model shipped in 1988 for just a few $1,000s, and it was a Kai and Roger Lynn's elaboration on the Lynn drum machine.
Prince made this thing very famous, the Lynn drum machine. His early recordings, all on the Lynn drum There were no live drums at all programmed on the Lindrum.
The concept, though, of taking samples of pre-recorded sound and composing with them existed long before the late 1980s, but those machines were limited by their price and portability.
The MPC was a different beast because it really puts you in the driver's seat in terms of sonic texture that you wanted to have.
That's Brian Radar Ellis, and that's his MPC Renaissance.
You know, really just make a mess of it. It's a fully customizable machine, whereas you look at maybe like the Lindrum or the Roland TR-808, which were specifically drum machines, the sounds came preloaded and you couldn't change them.
In short, the MPC60 was the musical brain of the studio. By 1994, when Akai introduced the MPC3000, it was the tool of choice for many of the top hip-hop producers in the game, including J. Dilla.
I think the thing with Dilla that inspired so many producers is that he was able to use such a wide vocabulary of technique.
J. Dilla was a producer out of Detroit in the mid-90s through his early death in 2006 from a rare blood disease. He passed away just 3 days after releasing one of his most fascinating and beloved albums, Donuts. He worked with an astounding list of iconic artists and pulled off the majority of his sound with just a few simple instruments, machines, and samplers, one of them being the MPC.
He knew how to get into every piece of the MPC and use it to a musical advantage.
So let's talk about J. Dilla's drum style first.
He figured out how to humanize the drum machine by avoiding certain things that he could have done to make it more robotic, make it more stiff.
For instance, the MPC has this incredibly useful tool called quantization.
What quantizing does is it takes your performance. Let's say I'm playing my drum pattern.
It's loose now.
And when I'm playing it, sometimes it's a little ahead, it's a little bit behind.
If your kick drums are off by a little bit, quantization snaps them in place.
And so a lot of producers, they use quantize, not as a crutch, but they just weren't thinking about not using it. And so Dilla was like, yeah, I'm just gonna turn this off.
The result is a discography full of incredibly off-kilter drums. This loose drumming style was incredibly influential. When Red Bull Music Academy interviewed Questlove, he said J. Dilla's drumming technique single-handedly changed how he played.
Whereas this part is normal, it sounded like the kick drum was played by like a drunk 3-year-old. I was like, are you allowed to do that? So it's like, that to me was the most liberating moment.
Dilla was known for his signature low-end texture, and his drums accounted for a lot of that sound. Here's just a regular sampled kick. Here's what that same kick with the high-end cutout sounds like. You'll hear that kick in a lot of Dilla beats, like on The Far Side's Runnin'. The other half of Dilla's low end came from his bass lines.
He had a way of kind of getting the fuzz and the bump out of a bass line.
The MPC gave Dilla the flexibility to create and manipulate his bass in a lot of different ways.
J. Dilla didn't just, drop out of nowhere and just know how to do everything all at once. He was listening to a lot of the legends. In fact, producers like Large Professor, they use this technique a lot to get extra mileage out of a sample. So right now I got this loop. This is Gap Mangione, Diana and the Autumn Wind. In order to get a verse section, what producers would do is they would filter out the high end and they just leave this bass space in here for the rapper to rap. And then when the chorus came back around, they bring all the frequencies back. So you have a verse section and a chorus section, 2-for-1 sale.
Bitch that you would know, I'm out of this. Cause you wanna be below. Y'all niggas in love with the S.
Oh.
Y'all niggas in love with the S.
One of my favorite Dilla bass lines, though, actually came from his Moog.
Greatest synth of all time, the Mini Moog. This is a really nice clinic for anybody learning beat making. Um, there's a lot of truth to what they're saying here, and not that there wouldn't be. I just happen to agree with everything they're saying, um, because basically you can take a sample, and you guys have heard me do this before, where you can kind of cut things out. There's we got programs nowadays. DJ Dilla didn't have these. We got programs nowadays where you can literally remove just the bass line from an entire song, or you can literally remove just the drums from an entire song. Um, and the programs are getting better and better and better at doing that. Uh, what what DJ Dilla did, uh, and this is where it really raises your eyebrows, is he was able to use a lot of the same samples and completely rework them and make them sound completely different. He was a serious innovator. He belongs in that museum, especially after listening to Donuts. Oh my god, that was incredible what he was able to do with that. It's mind blowing. Mind blowing.
Synthesizer, which was custom made by Robert Moog himself.
Matter of fact, I talked one time. I forget what album we were doing. We were doing a full length, and they were using a hydrosynth, and you can always hear a hydrosynth. They stick out like a sore thumb. It's got a real wet sound to it. That's why they call it a hydrosynth. But what you may not know is the hydrosynth is basically a Moog, with different filters on it that allow that wetness to come through. You can pretty much do what you can do on a hydrosynth on a Moog. You just need the right filtering for it. But Moog was the originator of that real deep, low end bass synth driving so many songs back in the day. And even rock and roll songs, the song Tom Sawyer. If you ever wonder what that thing at the very beginning of the song is, that's a mini Moog. Mini Moog. I always say Moog because it's double G, but it's supposed to be pronounced Moog. Whatever.
Just focus on how much his bass line rattles the low end of the song and meanders in and around the beat.
That's a Moog, man.
He was very meticulous about, what was going to kind of ooze and lay back a little bit. If you listen to his Moog bass, it couldn't care less if it got there on time, but somehow it does.
He internalized every possible technique used in hip-hop and expanded upon it, and he did so with just an intense love and curiosity of sounds, and a lot of patience. If we look back at E = MC squared, we've got an incredible sub-bassy low end, and a sample from an incredibly off-the-wall song by Giorgio Moroder.
Energy equals MC squared.
Something that makes this record stand out is the how he extended it. Because if you just listen to it, it kind of only goes for a few beats, and he was able to extend it as far as he wanted.
Energy equals.
There are so many songs that show J Dilla's ability to flip a sample, but there's one that gives me goosebumps every time I hear it.
I can't stand to see you cry now, baby, now.
A lot of people think sampling is easy because they're like, they're just listening to the melody on top, but they're not thinking about what the instruments below that lead melody are doing and how they're playing a role in the beat.
The first 40 seconds of
Well, it's beyond that. It's way beyond that. Because, and I talked about this, I think, during Donuts album that we listened to. everything underneath, as a matter of fact, I'm almost positive we talked about this. Everything underneath has to be in the same key. It has to be. Otherwise, you're going to get notes that don't work. And it'll just sound like shit. So it has to be in the same key. Or at the very least, you have to be able to change the same key. So let's say it's in the key of A minor, right? But the song is in D minor. That's 5 semitones. You've got to make up there somehow and make it still sound like the original. It can be a very difficult task.
Don't Cry is just a few long loops of the Escorts' I Can't Stand to See You Cry. He barely did anything with them. He's basically saying, this is all I have to work with. At 40 seconds, though, he says, now look what I can do with this MPC. Instead of chopping to the melody, he chopped up a handful of kicks and snares throughout the entire song, regardless of the melody on top of it. And like little puzzle pieces, he resequenced those kicks and snares to create this entirely new, dream-like song.
I think Dilla was just like super funky. A lot of that had to do with, him being willing to not care if the record speeds up or slows down as long as it feels good, and just throwing that care out the window and just being like, forget quantize, man. It does what I say it does. And then, just rocking like that.
Akai has released a steady stream of MPCs since the MPC60 and 3000. They've gotten glossier, more high-tech, more portable, and more integrated into digital audio workstations than ever before. But those 16 pads and scroll knob have persisted, and that tactile design has even influenced the design of countless other pieces of audio software. In the instruction manual for the MPC3000, Roger Lynn gives an introduction. And in that introduction, he asks the people that use the MPC to treat it like an instrument. It's like the modern-day piano or violin. And even though a lot of people say J. Dilla never read the manual for the MPC3000, he still internalized that same idea. He used his MPC like Jimi Hendrix played his guitar or John Coltrane played the saxophone. It was an extension of himself. That's probably why, out of all the MPCs used by countless hip-hop producers and beat makers over the years, J. Dilla's is in a museum.
That was solid, man. J. Dilla was definitely a pioneer in hip-hop. And, this is another example of a situation where I just would not have known about somebody as important as J. Dilla to the world, especially the world of music, but the world really, considering artists that he worked with and everything else. It's without this channel, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So thank you, Michael, for that. I appreciate you. That was awesome. I hope that everybody kind of got a little something out of that. Little Biker Dude, peace.